So what's our intention here? Our intention is to articulate new interior technologies. Our intention is to articulate a new set of first principles and first values. Because it's only first principles and first values that allow us to make every decision we make, allow us to orient ourselves and be the most beautiful, the most gorgeous that we can be. And without first principles, without first values, we have no way of understanding. We have no way of orienting ourselves. We have no sense of what's more true and what's less true, what's of more value and what's of less value. We can't quite distinguish between a sophisticated artificial intelligence, machine learning, android, and a human being, right, who feels. Those two get blurred. We can't quite distinguish between what is integrity and what's not integrity. We can't distinguish between what desire is stunning and beautiful and what desire is not clarified. We can't distinguish between where we should put our energy and time and why we're particularly alive at the particular place we were born and in the particular family into which we were born, in the particular time into which we're born, with the particular capacities we have. We don't quite know what to do with it. And so we go into a depression, which is the largest and most deadly disease growing faster than anything else in the last 5 years all over the world, and exponentialized since the pandemic began. But already the 5 years before, the fastest growing disease on the planet. And depression comes from the inability to access joy. And joy comes from, and today we're going to talk about joy. That's our first principle today, is the first principle of joy. We're going to talk about, where does joy come from? But let's just start with this. You can't access joy, and what we're going to call evolutionary joy, unless you're actually in some sense on purpose. If you're living the life you were meant to live. If you're actually stepping up because you have the capacity. And if you're here with us, if you found us and we found you and we found each other, then you have that capacity, or you wouldn't be here. You're actually stepping up and taking your seat at the table of history. You're stepping out of the small concerns, as important as they may be, and the petty concerns that need to be jettisoned. And you're saying, I want to take a seat at the table of history. And at this moment, as we stand between utopia, this unimagined beauty, and dystopia, a devolution, right? A level of suffering and collapse that's virtually unimaginable, which could end in extinction itself quite easily in multiple scenarios. Right? We're at that pivoting point. We're at that phase shift in human history. We're at that time between stories and time between worlds. And that's where we are. So what are we doing here? We're here to make a revolution. We're here to actually take our seat at the table. We're here to actually be those who say we take responsibility for this. And our position is, that we've thought about day and night, is that the most revolutionary act that we can do, the greatest moral imperative of this time, is to articulate a new story. Right? That at this time between worlds, right? At this time when we are, as Da Vinci was in the Renaissance, as the Black Death engulfed Europe, pandemic spread unlike any other. And the old vision, the old story, the old values didn't hold. They broke down. Pre-modernity was ending, and the world could go into dystopian collapse unless a group of people came together and they actually took a second look, and they went deeper, and they opened their hearts even more, and they stepped into the very field of evolutionary joy itself. They were animated by the aliveness of that joy. And as we're going to see later today, and we're going to say it again, there's no contradiction between joy and a broken heart. Joy and a broken heart live together. They breathe together. They pulse together, right? So with utter joy, right, and a wild broken heart, with wild joy and an utter broken heart, Da Vinci and his cohorts went to revision reality, right? to participate, to be evolution, to be the leading edge of evolution, to be in their bodies, right, in their hearts, in their minds, in their very souls, to be evolution's arrow, right, to be the evolution of love. And that's what they went to do. So at the core of joy is amor, and amor is love. Amor is eros, right? Joy is actually a quality of eros. And what is eros? Wow. And this code is huge. What is eros? Right now, let's write it together in the chat box, right? Joy is a quality of eros. And what is eros? Right? Eros is the experience of radical aliveness, but not static aliveness. It's moving, it has direction, it has telos. And it's moving where? Right? It's moving towards, right? Joy is the experience of radical aliveness, moving towards ever, right? Ever what? Ever greater, ever deeper levels of what? Of what? Of contact and of wholeness. That's eros. Eros is the experience of radical aliveness, moving towards ever deeper levels of contact and ever greater wholes. That's the movement of eros. Wow. Right? And eros is love, is amor. It's actually the ontological quality. It's a first value. Eros lives in the allurement between subatomic particles. Eros lives in the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang. Eros is the inceptive force that is cause for that moment of Big Bang and for all moments. Eros is the animating force of the four forces of cosmos: the strong and the weak nuclear, the electromagnetic, the gravitational. Eros is that moves me. And I'm a unique configuration of eros. And the clarification of my unique eros, right, is the story of my life. You can't have joy when you're alone. There's no joy without intimacy. Right? And knowing that we live in an intimate universe, and knowing that, number one, life's not over when it's over. You know, Jung, right, the great and complex, right, figure in psychotherapy, was complex. He had moments of tragedy. He also had moments of greatness. But in his moments of greatness, Jung wrote, one of the most important things I share with my patients is I need them to know of the immortality of the human being. And that is essential, he writes, for their mental health. I want you to get this, it's deep, right? If you think that basically when you reach age 90 or 80 or 70 or 40 or 85, right? But when you reach that age, you die and it's over, it's virtually impossible to achieve mental health, to achieve joy, right? Because you've got this false understanding foisted, downloaded into you by a dogmatic, materialist, reductionist, not science, nothing to do with science, but scientism, a kind of dogma. And how can you actually have joy when you actually have this experience that it's never going to be fair and justice is never going to be achieved and you're going to lose all the ones that you love forever? How could you actually be in joy? How could you actually have mental health? Not possible. It's deep. Right? Unless you actually have an experience of the larger field of consciousness, unless you actually have an experience that you live in an intimate universe that is coherent, you can't access joy. You certainly can't say anything about evil, right? There's no trouble with evil. There's no problem of evil unless the world is good. And unless I live in an intimate universe, unless the world should be filled with joy, so that if it's not filled with joy, it's a violation. If the world's not intimate, it's a violation. And part of knowing, right, friends, right, outrageous lovers, beloveds, right, to each other, right, and to reality, and reality to us, part of knowing that we live in an intimate universe is knowing that reality is personal. And this is deep, right? That reality is more personal than we can possibly imagine. We participate in a quality of personalness, right? There's the personal quality of Christina Amline, who read beautifully, right? And gave this, the Dharma recapitulation. And then, Professor Molinaire, right, from Corsica, right, who resonated the code, right? And then Rob, right, who did Amor, and Krista, who we'll hear from later, and David, who we often hear from, right? Right. So each one of these are personal qualities, and it's in their personalness that we get the fragrance, right, of their spirit, of their value, right, of their godness, if you will, of their infinite gorgeousness, right, of their quality, whatever word you want to use. So when we talk about the divine, when we talk about spiritual, when we talk about godness, we're not talking about the God who was hijacked by a church seeking power. The God you don't believe in doesn't exist. We're talking about the godness. We're talking about the infinite value, which is both the force that runs through cosmos, the force of eros that animates all the four forces, the force of eros. See if I can get a sentence straight. That animates all the four forces that we talked about in the beginning. And that force, that third person force, that it is also a thou. It's also a you. But there's also a direct and intimate personal relationship between reality and me. Reality is so close to me. Reality is whispering in my ear and every second, literally. Reality knows my name. And when you get quiet, you can feel it, right? When you feel your self-value, when you feel the importance, right, of your journey in this world, you realize you matter, and you realize your journey is unique, and you realize that you were intended by reality. And see if you can access that. You were intended. The intimate universe is not just a network of third-person interconnections and forces. The intimate universe is more personal than personal. The intimate universe knows your name, right? A new code today, right? So let's read it together. Okay, can we read it together? Right? Joy is the first principle of Kosmos. Does everyone get that? That means that joy is not a psychological construct, right? It's not, happiness is not, right, this social construction of reality. Happiness is not just a fiction. Yes, there are different things in every generation that bring us to joy. And there's an evolution of wisdom in terms of what true joy actually means, right? And there can be a kind of false joy, a kind of pseudo-eros, a kind of pseudo-joy. But the experience of joy, right, cuts across cultures and cuts across generations. There's a moment in which we feel at home in cosmos, and we're awake and we're alive and we're filled with joy, right? Joy is the first principles of cosmos. Joy is the inner core of reality. And evolutionary joy is the highest form of joy. Okay? So what does that mean? So let's try and find it. We usually understand joy, right? You ask people, okay, when are you going to have joy? When are you going to really be in joy? When are you going to be happy? But genuine joy. And I remember I was 22, 23 when I started asking this question, right, in teaching. And people would say to me, well, I'm okay. I feel like, some contentment, but if I was going to be in joy, I would have gotten my PhD. I would have this job. I would have married this kind of man. I would have these kids. I would have this amount of income, right? And I remember being in a particular town when I was maybe 23, 24, giving a talk. I think it was in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the United States. And a bunch of years later, I made it back to Raleigh. And I came to the same hall, and lots of the same people were there because it was a particular congregation. And I thought, well, let me ask them. This was like, 6, 7, 8 years later. You guys remember when we talked 7, 8 years ago? And I asked, what do you need to have joy? And everybody gave different little lists. So how many of you have achieved your lists? And amazingly, it was one, we were all in our, people are 20s, 30s. It's an age where a lot moves. So most everyone would raise their hand, 7, 8 years ago was there and had actually achieved most of the things on their list. And so I said, okay, so are you in joy now? And you can imagine the room went quiet. So it was very clear to everyone that even though they'd achieved their list, they weren't in joy. Does everyone get that? Joy doesn't live out there. Joy's never a reaction, right? Joy isn't, I didn't have something, now I have it. So now I'm in joy, right? Joy actually is the fabric of reality itself. Reality itself trembles with joy. The inner fabric of the subatomic and atomic universe trembles with joy. It experiences allurement and pleasure. And when it finds rightness, when it finds right fit, when it fulfills its inherent purpose, when it experiences its inherent aliveness, those atoms that live in us, that live in you and me, those atoms are not out there. They live in us. They constitute you and me, literally, right? We are those atoms, right? We are those molecules. We are those cells, right? Cells are literally explosions of joy, right? The cellular world explodes with joy. And you can actually, when you actually watch cells in action, right, it's like you can actually feel when you watch actually all the different components of the cell, when a cell is functioning in a healthy way, right, you can actually, right, experience, right, the actual joy that every cell experiences. And that's what makes us up, right? We actually live, right, our natural experience when we get through the twists, when we get through the cravings, when we get through the contractions, the clenches, when we unclench, when we actually rest in the natural nature of reality. We rest in who we actually truly are in our very nature. And then, that's not enough. Then we need evolutionary joy. That first joy I just described is the joy of being. Then there's a joy of becoming. That's evolutionary joy, in which I'm actually reaching towards my unique purpose. Just like the subatomic particle is living on purpose, I'm reaching towards my unique purpose. I'm giving my unique gift, right? I'm literally incarnating that pulsation, right, of gifting, right? That is evolution awakened in me, right? That's evolutionary joy, right? When that begins to happen, so joy literally rocks and moves reality in an unimaginable way, It's there. Joy is actually available every second. You can't pursue joy, right? That's the code. You can't pursue joy, right? Maybe we can find the code right again, right? You can't pursue joy, right? Joy is the highest form. Joy can't be pursued, or it runs the other direction. Joy is only available as the natural byproduct of the passionate pursuit of something other than joy. And what is that? That is literally living my unique story, right? Living my unique self. Just like the subatomic particle lives its unique destiny, and the plant lives its unique destiny, and the animal, right, lives its unique destiny, right? And the natural aliveness of the forest and the aliveness, right, of nature in all of her resplendent magnificence. When I'm living my destiny, when I'm aligned, when my clothes fit. Have you ever had like great clothes that like fit perfectly? Who's had great clothes that fit perfectly? Just like, wow, these clothes just fall on my body perfectly, and I just feel like larger than life. Who's ever had that, right? You ever had that experience? Right there. Who's it? Chat box. I'm checking out great clothes in the chat box. Yes, anybody else? Right? Just like fantastic clothes. And you're just like, oh my God, right? Not for any reason, right? You're in yourself. You fit, the clothes fit. You're in your story. Right? Then, oh my God. So to get to joy, we're going to talk about joy for the next 3 weeks. We're going to go deep into joy. We're just beginning. We're just touching the surface of joy this week. We're not going all the way. We're just touching the surface of joy. Right? So joy is the byproduct. You can't pursue joy. In the American founding documents, there's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the pursuit of happiness doesn't work. It's the great mistake, right, of the modern neoliberal world and of the founding fathers. You can't pursue joy. You got to pursue, right, living your unique self. Living, right? Who is the one in joy? Who is the one in joy? The one in joy is the one who's joyous in his unique destiny. That's a 3rd century text. Joy comes from living your unique destiny, from wearing the right clothes, from going all the way in this lifetime in your story, and from knowing that your story is not an isolated story, that your story is chapter and verse in the universal love story. So we're going to do a meditation now, everyone, okay? Our last 5 minutes, we're going to do a meditation. We just opened up. Who feels like we've just opened up? We're just getting started, right? Right? Who can feel it? We're just opening up into this notion of evolutionary joy. We can't actually change the source code. We can't activate this revolution. We can't step in at this moment between utopia and dystopia unless we do it with radical joy. We're going to have to find our path to joy, even as our hearts are broken. Even as our hearts are broken, even as we're experiencing sometimes pain beyond imagination, right? There's no contradiction between joy and pain, right? There's no contradiction between a broken heart and radical joy. They live together, right? I sometimes say that we laugh out of one side of our mouth and we cry out of the other. We're brokenhearted in 1 second, and the very same second, the very next second, we're filled with joy. Because joy comes not from a circumstance. Joy comes from the very experience of being fully alive. I look at the ocean and my mind is blowing open and I feel this, right? Music, right? Accesses joy. So I want to invite you to come with me. And I want to ask everyone, this is our last 5 minutes. I want to ask everyone, we're about to see a vision of Ode to Joy, and we're going to talk about it and see another vision next week and another one the week after. And we're going to look at Schiller's Ode to Joy, and we're going to go deep into the great traditions, pre-modern, modern, and postmodern. We're going to articulate joy as a first principle. But for now, I want to end and I want to show you, with your permission, this clip, like this Ode to Joy. And I want you to watch the people's faces. Right? This is Ode to Joy. Watch the faces, watch it happen, and let it move through your body and see what it means, in which joy is not because I got something. It's not because I filled in the emptiness. It's not fun. Joy is not fun. It's not, right? Fun's beautiful, but joy's so much deeper. Right? Joy's right there, right? Whispering in your ear, trembling in your body, trembling in reality. So take us inside. Christina Amelon, take us inside to Ode to Joy. Full picture, full picture. Yeah. Now watch the people. Watch everybody. Watch the faces. Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Watch the faces. Just getting started. Let it grow on you. Open your heart. Let's open our hearts together. Make it happen. Bring us back in, Christina Apple. Bring us back in, love. Bring us back in. Yeah, wow. 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 Wow, right? So just like, what did you see? Right? Did you see the faces of the people, of the little boy? Or did you see the girl climbing up? Did you see the people gathering, right, to watch? Now, what happened there? That there wasn't an event? No one got a new car, right? No one got a new job. What happened? You get that? That is the joy of reality itself. It's reality's true nature exploding, right? Ode to joy, right? It is, right? The very joy of life itself, right? Joy's never about something. Joy that's about something's not actually joy. Right? That's actually something else. It's a form of pseudo-eros. It's a form of cover-up. It's not that we can't have joy when we get something. Of course we can. But it's really about knowing that it's always, reality trembles with joy. And if I just let myself become, right? I'm on purpose, right? I'm living my story. And that story can have agony and ecstasy. It can have a broken and a holy hallelujah. But I know my story matters. I know the infinity of intimacy loves me madly. I know that my story is chapter and verse in the universal love story. Then, oh my God, ode to joy, right? My very being, my very becoming is literally, right? Joy every second. Joy is, right? The radical aliveness of cosmos. And here's the thing. Music discloses the nature of the intimate universe. If the joy wasn't there, right, how many people felt it? Just show of hands. How many people felt it? Anybody? Who felt it? Give us a yes. Who felt it? Who felt it? Who else? Right? But a yes, caps. Yes, 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 right? Total, right? Yes, like explodes, right? So where'd they take it from? It was there. They just opened the door, right? Wow. Right? I want to close with one little thing, okay? One text from the 3rd century. Right? The text says, all the gates are closed, right? All the gates are closed, but the gates of tears are always open, right? So the masters say the gates of tears never close, right? Like, wow, that's like big. But then the most hidden masters, commenting on this text, they say, yeah, when your heart's broken, the gates never close. But when you're in joy, it doesn't matter if the gates are closed because joy breaks through all the gates. Do you get that? Like, yes, a broken heart opens, right? A broken heart, all the gates are open. The gates never close to our broken hearts. But we're in joy, my friends, right? It breaks through all the gates. It breaks through all the limitations, right? This is a moment of breaking through limitations. This is a moment of writing a new story. This is a moment of being evolution awakening to itself. And the evolutionary impulse is thrilling. Right? We're delighted in every moment. We're blown open. right? The moment loves us open. When the moment loves us open, we love the moment open. And in this dance, right, we feel reality kissing itself with joy. Wow. Wow. I'm going to give you the last text. This is a text from different versions of it, from the 1st century, the 4th century, the 7th century, right? Different mystical traditions, the 13th century. But basically the text says that the inception of reality was the Ashua, right? The Shakti, Sanskrit, Hebrew, right? The trembling joy of the infinite. And in the text, it's actually the autoerotic joy of God, right? God causing divine pleasure, the self-pleasuring of divinity, the joy of divinity's arousal of desire, exploding with joy, births reality. Wow. Right? Your joy births reality. Right? Embrace your joy. Right? Fall into it. We'll fall into it together. We're going to be outrageous lovers. We live in a world of outrageous pain. We never turn away. The only response to outrageous pain is outrageous love, and outrageous love is filled with outrageous joy.